They destroyed her reputation with lies, watched her walk away without a fight, never realizing the silence they mocked would one day decide their fate. Evelyn Carter learned early that silence felt safer than visibility. At Halston and Rowe Consulting, the loudest voices were rewarded. People who spoke confidently, even when they were wrong, were remembered. People who worked quietly, even when they were right, were often ignored. Evelyn belonged to the second group. For 8 years, she arrived before sunrise and left long after the office lights dimmed. She built reports others didn't have the patience to finish. She corrected mistakes no one noticed. She saved accounts that were already written off internally. Her reward was consistency. No promotions, no public praise, just more responsibility. And she accepted it because she believed in one simple idea: good work always finds its way. Her direct manager, Mark Reynolds, believed in something else. Mark believed perception mattered more than truth. He was charming, articulate, and knew exactly when to speak in meetings. He used phrases like strategic alignment and forward momentum without ever explaining what they meant. Senior partners loved him because he made things sound under control, even when they weren't. Mark never built anything from scratch. He collected ideas, effort, credit, and Evelyn was his most valuable source. Every major client success followed the same pattern. Evelyn would spend weeks researching, modeling scenarios, identifying risks, and designing solutions. She would share her findings with Mark during private check-ins. Mark would nod, ask a few surface-level questions, and thank her for being a team player. Then, in meetings, he would present those ideas as his own. He never used her name. At first, Evelyn told herself it didn't matter. Titles and applause were distractions, results were permanent. But permanence, she would soon learn, depends on who controls the story. The turning point came with the Westbridge healthcare pitch. It was the largest contract Halston and Rowe had pursued in years, an international healthcare group facing public scrutiny, internal chaos, and financial instability. If the firm won the deal, bonuses would be generous. Careers would be made. Mark assigned the project to Evelyn and 2 junior analysts. "We need something solid," he said. "This client can't afford mistakes." Evelyn understood what that meant. She carried the project. She worked through weekends, canceled plans, and spent nights cross-checking data against industry failures. She anticipated regulatory risks no one had flagged. She built contingency models that allowed the client to pivot without public fallout. The juniors followed her lead, learning more in 6 weeks than they had in a year. When the final presentation deck was complete, Mark asked for a quick review. "I just want to make sure leadership sees the story clearly," he said. Evelyn sent the file. He never responded. On the day of the pitch, Evelyn sat quietly at the back of the conference room. Mark stood at the front, confident and composed, clicking through slides she recognized instantly. Her words, her logic, her solutions, but delivered in his voice. The board applauded. The client signed. Mark shook hands, smiling broadly, accepting congratulations. No one looked at Evelyn. 2 days later, HR emailed her. Mandatory meeting. Confidential. The room was cold and overly bright. Glass walls. Neutral furniture. A sense of finality. An HR representative sat across from her, polite but distant. Mark sat beside her, hands folded neatly, eyes fixed on the table. A folder slid across the desk. Inside were printed emails, accusations, claims of difficult communication, lack of collaboration, and unprofessional conduct. Messages Evelyn had never written. Complaints she had never received. Evelyn looked up slowly. "This must be a mistake," she said calmly. "I've never been informed of any concerns." The HR representative paused. Given their seriousness, leadership believes it's best if we move forward quietly. This decision is final, HR added. We recommend a voluntary resignation to protect everyone involved. Everyone, except her. Evelyn understood something in that moment. This wasn't about performance. It wasn't about professionalism. It wasn't even about conflict. It was about control. Mark had needed her invisible, and now he needed her gone. Evelyn signed nothing. She stood, thanked HR for their time, and walked out. She packed her desk that evening. A small box. A few notebooks. 8 years reduced to silence. Colleagues avoided her eyes. No one asked questions. No one intervened. As she waited for the elevator, Mark approached. I wish things hadn't gone this way, he said softly. Evelyn looked at him for the first time since the meeting. Then you should have told the truth, she replied. He said nothing. The elevator doors closed. The weeks that followed were harder than she expected. Recruiters stopped responding. Interviews ended abruptly when her departure came up. Rumors traveled faster than facts. Her reputation, carefully built over nearly a decade, had been rewritten in a single meeting she was never allowed to defend herself in. At night, doubt crept in. Maybe I should have spoken more. Maybe silence made it easy. But another thought followed. Clearer, sharper. Silence didn't betray me. People did. Evelyn stopped chasing explanations. Instead, she started observing. She reviewed old projects. She saw patterns others missed. She realized how much knowledge she had given away without ever owning it. She didn't apply for jobs. She started consulting independently, quietly. One client became 2. 2 became 5. Word spread, not loudly but steadily. For the first time, her work carried her name. And somewhere inside her, something shifted. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something none of them had planned for. Silence feels powerful only when it is chosen. For Evelyn Carter, silence was forced on her, and it echoed louder than any accusation. The first week after leaving Halston and Rowe felt unreal, like walking through a city after a storm. Everything looked familiar yet nothing felt safe. Her phone stayed quiet. Emails went unanswered. The professional world she had lived in for 8 years had erased her overnight. Mornings were the hardest. She would wake up early out of habit, her body still trained for deadlines and meetings. For a few seconds, she forgot everything. Then reality returned, sharp and unforgiving. No office, no badge. No place to go. She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at her laptop, refreshing her inbox as if answers might suddenly appear. They never did. Recruiters who once praised her experience now hesitated. Interviewers smiled politely. Until her departure came up. Why did you leave your last role? They asked. Evelyn answered honestly, carefully. There had been internal politics. There had been misalignment. There had been a decision made without discussion. The room always changed after that. The smiles tightened. The questions shortened. The calls never came back. It didn't matter what was true. She replayed conversations in her mind. If I had defended myself, everything happens for a reason. just enough to release the weight she carried all day. And every time she wiped her tears, she promised herself one thing: she would not beg for a place that didn't want her truth. Proof of her thinking, her discipline, her value. For the first time since she had left, Evelyn didn't feel small. She felt aware. She saw patterns she had ignored before, how often she had been the solution without being the name. How much knowledge she had given away freely, assuming fairness would protect her. Fairness hadn't, but skill still existed. And skill, she realized, didn't belong to Mark. It belonged to her. She stopped applying for jobs. The decision surprised even her. Instead, she reached out to one former client, someone she had worked closely with, but never directly served. She didn't mention Halston and Rowe. She didn't explain her departure. She simply asked, "Would you be open to a short consultation?" The answer came within an hour. Yes. That first meeting was small, informal, uncertain. But when she spoke, when she explained systems, risks, and solutions, something familiar returned. Respect, not forced. Not political, earned. The client paid her for that hour. It wasn't much. But it was honest. 1 hour became 3. 3 became a short-term contract. Then another client asked for her name. Word spread quietly. No announcements. No applause. Just results. Evelyn worked from her apartment, her kitchen table becoming her office again, this time by choice. She set boundaries she had never been allowed before. She charged for her expertise without apology. She signed her own name on her work, and slowly something inside her healed. Still, the past lingered. Some nights, she wondered if Mark ever thought about her. If he remembered the woman he had pushed out to protect his image. But she didn't dwell on it. Because she had learned something powerful during her struggle. Healing doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from rebuilding. And while she was rebuilding her life, the people who betrayed her were standing on ground that would not stay firm forever. Revenge, Evelyn realized, doesn't begin with anger. It begins with clarity. By the time her independent consulting work stabilized, the bitterness had faded. Her days were full again, meetings, reports, decisions that mattered. And yet the past had not disappeared. It was waiting. The first sign came quietly. An email from an unfamiliar address, short and professional. "We've been following your work. Would you be open to a confidential advisory discussion?" Evelyn hesitated. She had learned to be cautious. Still, curiosity won. The firm was called Northbridge Advisory, a small but respected consultancy that worked with companies facing internal risk, leadership breakdowns, and ethical exposure. They didn't offer her a job. They offered access. "We don't need loud experts," the senior partner said. "We need people who see what others ignore." Evelyn understood exactly what he meant. She accepted a limited advisory role, contract-based, discreet, independent. Her task was simple: review systems, identify weaknesses, recommend controls. No politics, no visibility, just truth. Weeks into the work, she noticed something familiar. One of Northbridge's largest ongoing evaluations involved a mid-sized consulting firm struggling with delivery failures, internal friction, and declining client trust. The name stopped her cold. Halston and Rowe Consulting. Evelyn stared at the screen longer than necessary. She hadn't sought them out. She hadn't planned this. And yet, here they were. She informed Northbridge of a potential conflict. The response surprised her. "Your distance from the firm is precisely why your perspective matters." They gave her a choice. Evelyn took a day to decide. Not because she was afraid, but because she needed to be sure. This was not about settling scores. This was about integrity. She agreed under strict conditions, no personal commentary, no direct confrontation, facts only. Evelyn began the review quietly. She didn't attend meetings, she didn't introduce herself. She read reports. And the patterns emerged almost immediately. Projects over-dependent on a single leader. Documentation gaps. Junior staff carrying execution without recognition. The same structure she had lived inside. She followed the data trails. Missed deadlines explained away by confident presentations. Credit flowing upward. Accountability disappearing sideways. Mark Reynolds' name appeared repeatedly, not as a problem, but as a central dependency. The firm leaned on him heavily. Too heavily. And that was dangerous. Evelyn did not smile. She did not feel satisfaction. She felt confirmation. This wasn't personal failure. It was systemic behavior. She compiled her findings carefully, stripping them of emotion. Every observation supported by evidence. Every conclusion traceable. She submitted her report anonymously. Northbridge reviewed it, then asked questions, then asked for more detail. Her role expanded. Still invisible, still quiet. Meanwhile, Holston and Rowe felt the pressure. Audits increased. Clients asked harder questions. Leadership meetings grew tense. Mark worked harder than ever to maintain control. He spoke more, promised more, smiled wider. But cracks don't respond to confidence, they respond to pressure. One afternoon, Evelyn received a calendar invite. Executive review session, attendance required. Her name was listed among external advisors. For the first time, her involvement would no longer be abstract. She considered declining. Then she remembered the HR room. The folder of lies. The resignation she never signed. She accepted. The night before the meeting, Evelyn prepared quietly. Not a speech. Not a confrontation. Just notes. She slept well. Not because justice was coming, but because she no longer needed it to move forward. At Halston and Rowe, Mark sensed something shifting. Silence no longer worked in his favor. The executive review session arrived. Questions sharpened. Documentation was demanded. Mark's confidence began to fracture. Requests for proof multiplied. The kind of proof he had never bothered to keep. Leadership began asking different questions. Who actually handled this? Why isn't this documented? Fear loosened its grip. Honesty followed. One internal session ended early. The room felt heavy. Mark sent a follow-up email outlining strategic adjustments. No one replied. Meanwhile, Evelyn remained detached. She reviewed, clarified, corrected. The truth didn't need embellishment. Clients noticed changes. Revenue dipped. Oversight tightened. Mark was asked to step back. Quietly, not fired. Not accused, paused. The same way Evelyn had been removed years earlier. Mark sat alone one evening, staring at the city lights. For the first time, the silence felt hostile. Northbridge scheduled one final review. All senior partners would attend. External advisors would present openly. Evelyn's name appeared clearly on the invite. She felt no triumph. Only closure approaching. On the day of the presentation, she entered calmly. The same floors, the same glass walls. Different power. Mark looked away first. Evelyn spoke clearly, not loudly. Not defensively. She presented timelines, outcomes, attribution. She named teams, processes, contributors. For the first time, the full picture was visible, and in that picture, Mark was no longer the center. The meeting ended without applause. But decisions were made, restructuring approved, oversight enforced, leadership accountability rewritten. Mark was asked to resign within the quarter. Quietly, as the room emptied, a partner spoke. "We should have seen this earlier." "Yes," Evelyn replied. "You should have." She left without looking back. The truth arrived as a document. A formal internal report, timelines, evidence, attribution. Evelyn's name appeared repeatedly beside the work. Inside the firm, reactions unfolded in silence. No one argued. Mark read the report alone. Layer by layer, his protection disappeared. At the center of it all, Evelyn Carter. He requested a meeting. Not to defend, to explain, but explanations only matter when doubt exists. This time doubt was gone. Across the city, Evelyn continued her work. Undisturbed, an email arrived, acknowledgement, an apology, recognition. She read it once. Then closed her laptop. The real reveal was not public. There was no announcement. No apology speech. And she didn't need one. Because the truth has settled permanently into the system that once erased her. Weeks later, Evelyn attended a leadership conference as a guest advisor. She sat in the front row. A panel referenced a recent case study. A firm collapsed under unexamined authority. Evelyn did not smile. At the end, someone approached her. "You're known for staying calm when others get loud." "I'm known for finishing what I start," she replied. Time did not reward Evelyn Carter with applause. It rewarded her with peace. Months later, her life looked nothing like before. She worked fewer hours by choice. Her consulting practice grew steadily, built on trust. She chose her projects carefully. Occasionally, she passed the Halston and Row building. She never slowed down. Mark Reynolds' name rarely surfaced anymore. Silence, she realized, can erase just as effectively as it can protect. One afternoon, a young woman approached her. "I used to work there," she said. "Thank you. For what?" "For showing us that staying quiet doesn't mean staying powerless." That mattered more than any apology. Later, Evelyn walked home slowly. The city lights felt softer now. She thought about the woman she had been. She hadn't been wrong. She had simply been early. Evelyn never confronted Mark, never demanded regret. Her revenge was never about watching someone fall. It was about standing upright. In the end, the lesson was simple. Truth does not need volume. Justice does not need cruelty. Revenge does not always shout. Sometimes, it rebuilds quietly, waits patiently, and arrives without asking permission. Evelyn Carter closed her laptop and stood. Tomorrow would bring new work. One truth remained unshaken. Silence didn't destroy her. It revealed her strength.